Greetings, weirdlings, patrons, and casual observers. Today, I would like to chat about the seasonal cycle. Our understanding of the seasonal cycle of the wheel of the year is undermined by the Asatru heathen avoidance of anything remotely relating to paganism in its modern incarnation. Yet both Asatru's and heathenry's roots lie firmly in Wicca of the 1960s and early 70s. On an existential level, then, the knowledge of the cycle of the seasons has been lost. American Asatru's avoidance of seasonality within the lore, even, is perhaps similar to Christianity's obscuration of ancient pagan wisdom. Regarding the observation of seasons today, belongs more to mood and leisure than traditional and psycho-spiritual observation. Either through reclamation or adaptation, it falls on those who would take up this folkway to instill meaning into their interactions. Even if one were to invent a tradition, it would still work to identify the parameters of the individual or group, one that bonds members and allows an avenue of expression for the exploration of relationships with ordinary self and higher self. Those who wrote the sagas, who lived during those olden times, experienced regular exposure to seasonal extremes. They included these descriptions in their writings. Climate history need not have political implications, but provide profound insight into the diet and disease, the Thu and Seidr of the day. As such, narrative and poetic texts contribute to our understanding of the cognitive and emotive responses that we read within the lore. Regardless of the commodification and marketing of our folklore through TV shows supposedly based on Vikings or comics turned to film, which has resulted in all sorts of political and social distortion. Such exoteric representations both engage and distort authenticity. Now, instead of any hand-wringing that may occur over such matters, let me suggest a different perspective. If the folkway were only text, one could argue for a purist stance. However, when we look at the ancestors of those who wrote those original narratives and poems and how they share those among themselves, the notion of authenticity changes. You see, tradition is primarily about people, about communication and identity. Authenticity then depends on how any given group defines its own traditions. The requirement for authentic then becomes more or less relevant for each group. Where some would stress detail, others may embrace a broad variation. In short, authenticity is relative to who is determining any given authenticity and for what reasons. Now, returning to the seasons and the wheel of the year. There is an inevitable discrepancy between how we understand science and how we intuit ordinary experience. Our science may include astronomy and other quantifiable observations, or the immediate knowledge that though the vernal equinox may occur on March 20th through the 21st, based on astronomical reckoning, to the gardener who observes nocturnal frosts in their region, the exact scientific day of spring is of limited practical value to the actual sprouting, planting, and survival of crops. Today, many asatruer shun the wheel of the year based on, one, their avoidance of anything remotely resembling Wicca or witchcraft, and two, based on either Bede's or Tacitus's claim of seasonal observations among the Germanic tribes. Now, both accounts stem from Old Norse texts. That would be the Bede and Tacitus accounts, whose seasonal computation, much akin to today's, is based on full exposure to Atlantic storm fronts, Arctic blasts, low rain and high snow, and a high latitude with large seasonal variations of daylight, contributing to its description of land of the midnight sun. This does not match Germania, which was North Central Europe, a region which extended from the Middle and Lower Rhine in the west to the Vistula in the east. This area had a roughly temporal climate. Now include the United States with its 48 contiguous states. Its weather and seasonal patterns range drastically from fairly wet to radically dry, from cold semi-arid to warm and hot semi-arid, from humid subtropical to oceanic climates. The celestial tides of solstice and equinox fall on all equally, but the terrestrial tides of region seasonal patterns fluctuate from the southeast to the Gulf Coast, from the southern plains to the northern Great Plains, from the Pacific Northwest to the Great Lakes. If you live in the United States, as I do, adhering to Bede's two seasons model of winter and summer is both unpractical and unrealistic, shunning any suggestion of a wheel of the year with eight tidal or seasonal fluctuations as either somehow witchy or new age is needlessly reactionary and biased, not to mention the willful denial of incontrovertible observation to one's surroundings. Such cognitive reduction is detrimental to the furtherance of the folkway. The passage of time is a recurring theme in human development and thought. In that seasonal and chronological occurrences cannot be avoided, we readily find them in the Proto-Indo-European and Indo-European pantheons. Names and functions of deities, as even confirmed by meteorological and naturalistic science, has determined that these are descriptive celestial and terrestrial phenomena. So basically the gods were described from the stars above or what was occurring on Earth. Now, these seasonal and chronological occurrences are further seen in the folklore and written texts across all of Old Europe, across the northern, the western, the southern, and the central parts of Europe. Aside from the ordinary economic and domestic, political and warring components here, as a Seidr woman, I am innately drawn towards such as the identification and practical reclamation of the seasonal and chronological occurrences of ritual and sacred space in both the secular and liminal realms. Are there, for example, certain seasons conducive to direct contact with Jotuns and Gigyar, with Tavar, or other world entities? Is there a particular season conducive to signs and omens, ecstatic states, or prophecy? What impact does the internal seasonal shift, the psycho-spiritual fluctuations that each of us goes through, but few recognize as even existing, have on our ordinary and extraordinary reality? How do the known rites and festivals correspond to or with liminal space? What role do liminal beings have with ordinary and superordinary individuals? What purpose would one's ancestors have in honoring deities of the boundaries of liminal space? What purpose did they have for dying and rebirthing gods? What purpose those gods who descend to the underworld and return? Were such beings more than mirrors of the celestial tides? Or is there a sublime message awaiting those who venture at the crossroads? And what of those who seek out such crossroads, who follow the seasonal tides in quest of deeper understanding of Hoyer Moat? How are they transformed, if at all, by their journeys beyond the hedge? And what of those who choose to live life in well-defined boundaries? How may they benefit from the observation of the seasons? In closing, I will finish with a quote from Rainer Maria Rilke. He wrote, "This is in the end the only kind of courage that is required of us. The courage to face the strangest, most unusual, most inexplicable experiences that can meet us. The fact that people have, in this sense, been cowardly has done infinite harm to life. The experiences that are called apparition, the whole so-called world of spirit, death, all these things that are so closely related to us have, through our daily defensiveness, been so entirely eliminated from life that the senses with which we might have been able to grasp them have been atrophied." Until next time, I hope you choose to be happy, to be healthy, and to be whole.